Okay, so hi you guys. Today video I'm gonna do is gonna be on embracing your shadow side and doing the shadow work. Okay, so basically another word for our dark side is the shadow side. That's all it means. So the shadow side is just another form of your dark side. The shadow side is just another form of your demons you battle with. That's all it is. But that's the name of this video, embracing your shadow side, or however you want to look at it, embracing your demons and then doing the shadow work. Okay, so what you have to understand when it comes to embracing your shadow side is that you really see, and I know I talk about self-love a lot in my videos and self-care, okay, but I want to really get y'all to understand that a lot of times you can't get to the root of self-love and self-care until you can fully accept every aspect of who you are. Okay? So if you really want to really get on a spiritual journey and a self-love journey and a self-care to really just find your purpose and go on your spiritual journey of where you're supposed to be going, you're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to figure out how to embrace your shadow side, but also do the shadow side work. Okay, you're going, in order to really learn what self-love is, you're going to have to learn how to accept every single aspect about who you are as a person. Okay, because when you cannot accept every aspect of who you are, that means if you know you have a lot of clinginess in you, that means if you are needy, that means if you have a fear of abandonment, that means if you are really emotionally unavailable, that means that whatever it looks like for you, you have to be able to embrace every single aspect of your shadow side. Because until you can accept every aspect of who you are, period, you're not going to fully get the self-love that you want to give yourself. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to really be able to go on this spiritual journey until you can really embrace every aspect of who you are, period. There is no getting where. There is no getting around it, and don't get me wrong, you can do the self-love and the self-care journey, but until you embrace every aspect of who you are, until you embrace your shadow side, until you do the shadow side work, it'll constantly always be something that's resurfing in you, because once again, you're not embracing, you're not accepting the aspect of every shadow side of who you are. Okay, and a lot of times what we have been taught or trained, we have been taught or trained to believe that we have to suppress our shadow side, or we have to suppress the dark side of who we are, or triggers we have. You know what I'm saying? So we have been taught to suppress those things instead of effectively really learning where they came from and why we have these traits, and really understanding the root of where they came from, period. So a lot of times, instead of us really reflecting, really internally, really just being with ourselves to understand, why do we suppress our shadow side? Why do I suppress the fact that I'm clingy? Why do I suppress the fact that I'm needy? Why do I suppress the fact that I'm highly sensitive? Why do you see what I'm saying? So when we get to the place where we start suppressing our shadow side, okay, we do that because, for one, it starts at birth. It starts when we are younger. So what happens is that when we are younger, and if it's something like, I'll give y'all an example, okay? I am a highly, and I like to give y'all examples so y'all just can see it, okay? I am a highly sensitive person, okay? I am a very affectionate person. So, and I can be a very vulnerable person, okay? So from the time I was little, growing up, I was taught that to be that highly sensitive, to be that vulnerable like I am, to be like that, I was shamed for it. I was always told, okay, stop being weak. Stop being so sensitive. Stop being so vulnerable. Suck it up. Like that's how I was given. You see what I'm saying? So, and me being such a highly sensitive kid and such a vulnerable kid, and I was like, when I say I'm very affectionate, that's just who I was built to be from the time I came to this earth, okay? But what happened was that because I was shamed for that, what happened was that I suppressed, you know what I'm saying, as I got older, being highly sensitive. I suppressed being vulnerable. I suppressed that side of me that was affectionate. You know what I'm saying? So I pushed all of that stuff down in me and I suppressed it. Okay. And what happened is that I started to become more harder, more harsh. You see what I'm saying? So I started to put on more of a mask of not being so sensitive. So I give y'all that example because I want you to understand that this is what happens when we suppress our shadow side, okay? But that's what it means when you suppress your shadow side. It comes from childhood. And then as we grow up into adulthood, society and the world will make us feel like to be ashamed, to be highly sensitive, that's a sign of weakness. To be vulnerable is a sign of weakness. To be affectionate is a sign of weakness. To and you got to understand this, that when I say your shadow side can be any of your weaknesses. Your shadow side can be your impulses. Your shadow side can be your fears. Your shadow side can be desires that you really have. You see what I'm saying? So you got to understand what is what are shadow sides. It's all of those. So that means any type of thing that you felt like was a weakness for you, that's your shadow side that you suppress. Any type of fears, you see what I'm saying? Any type of desires. So those are things that you have to address when it comes to your shadow side, okay? And so a lot of times society, in growing up in households, a lot of times we are taught and we are programmed to suppress things within us that other people do not agree with. So I'll give you an example. That means if it's somebody that's really highly sensitive and they're vulnerable or they're needy, right? We are taught to not let nobody see that side of us. We are taught to suppress that side of us. We are taught to shove that down deep in us and don't let nobody see that side of you. Don't let nobody see that side of you because they're going to judge you. So, and that's why I said that our shadow side is also fear. So if you fear that somebody's going to see that highly sensitive side of you, or that vulnerable side of you, or that clingy or needy side of you, right? If you fear that, you see what I'm saying? That means that you're suppressing your shadow side. Because why? You fear the judgment. You fear that you won't be accepted, right? So that's all part of your shadow side. But what we have to understand and learn, and what I've learned in my own personal experience, is that if you want to really, really learn what really is your shadow side, if you really want to get to the root to figure out what is the root of your shadow side, like what aspects do you have that triggers your shadow side, look at your most intense romantic relationships. Look at your most intense friendships. And there you will find those triggers. So in your relationships, in romantic relationship, in your most intense relationships, look back and reflect and see what always triggered you. Okay? And there you will see your shadow side. Look back at your most intense friendships and see what always triggered. See what it was that you always suppressed. So that means that if you was in a romantic relationship with somebody and you were a very, very highly sensitive person where you love to be vocal and express who you are and express your feelings, right? And let's say, for instance, you're in a romantic relationship with somebody and they're the opposite. They're emotionally unavailable. They don't like to even hear about feelings or let alone see you express your feelings, right? So what did you do in that relationship, right? So because you didn't accept your shadow side, because you didn't accept the fact that this is part of who I am. I am highly sensitive. I am vulnerable. I am affectionate. I am clingy at times. I am needy. Because you couldn't accept your own shadow side, right? Let alone can somebody else accept it, because you've suppressed that part of you because you didn't want somebody else to see it. So what do you do in the relationship? You end up pushing who you really are, who you authentically are, your sensitive side, the sensitive person that you are. What you have done was take that part of that little girl that you are, that little boy that you are, and you have literally pushed yourself in a closet. I'm just giving you an example to see this visually. You have literally took that little girl, that little boy that you genuinely are, that sensitive person, and you have took that person and put him in a closet and shed it and locked it. Why? Because you fear of being judged. You fear of how people will view you. You fear of not being accepted if I show my shadow side. So that's what happens when you get in romantic relationships. When you look at your most intense relationships romantically, you'll see, where is my shadow side. So if you're in a relationship, or you've been in a relationship with somebody and you was never able to show your sensitive side, or really show your vulnerability, or really show your affectionate side, or even show your needy side sometimes, then that means that you feared that judgment from that other person. So that means that you literally chose that other person over your own self. That means you put that person in a position to be more important than your own self, your own life. And that's what happens, and not just romantically. Look at your most intense friendships. When you couldn't genuinely be yourself around your friends, and when you couldn't just really express freely how you needed to express, and you suppressed that, and you pushed it down and didn't want them to know, because you knew within your heart of heart you would be judged, or they would leave you feeling a certain way, or they wouldn't understand, or they just would make you feel like an outcast. What happened is you suppressed it, and you pushed that part of you down around your friends. And you literally said to yourself, I'm not going to be myself. I'm not authentically going to 100% be myself around my friends, because if I do, they won't accept me. They'll judge me. And so you fear the judgment. And so what happens is, now you have this wounded little girl on the inside of you. You have this wounded little boy on the inside of you that really wants to just express who they are freely, without any judgment, without any fear. But because a lot of times, from what happened from childhood and we brought it into our adulthood, we have been programmed into believe that we cannot express or even show our shadow side. And that's why every time something happens, it be a trigger with our shadow side. And even in Wayne Dyer, I looked at him a lot, and he made a good comment. He said, if you take an orange and if you squeeze that orange, what's gonna come out of it? Orange juice, right? Nothing else is gonna come out but orange juice. So the point of what he was saying is that if you squeeze that orange juice, the only thing you're going to get is orange juice that's coming out of it, because that's what's already in it, regardless. When you squeeze people, us as people, when we get put under the pressure, when we get pushed against the wall, when we feel like the pressure is caving in on us, okay, and we feeling like we are being squeezed so hard, whatever's in you, whether it's your shadow side, you want to embrace it or not, or whatever, it's going to come out of you. And that's why I'm on here to tell y'all to that really understand that you have to first accept every aspect of who you are. See, it took me a minute to get to this point, because yes, I can be very over affectionate, I can be very highly sensitive, I can be I'm very emotional. I can be needy. I have had times where I can be clingy. All of that stuff. But you know, the thing is, I embrace that about myself. I don't hide it from people. I don't suppress those anymore in me. The little girl that's in me, I don't suppress her anymore. I allow her to freely be who she needs to be, and I allow her to freely express how she needs to express herself without judging her, without being hard on myself. So what I've learned is that when you need to really, really learn how to break loose and learn how to deal with this type of shadow work, you got to first learn how to accept everything about you first. I always say this: you cannot get genuine love until you learn how to genuinely love yourself. You cannot expect someone else to accept your shadow side until you learn how to embrace your own shadow side first. So that's where our shadow side comes from. It stems strictly from when we are little girls and little boys, and we are taught to suppress those fears. We are taught to suppress our desires. We are taught to suppress our abilities. We are taught to suppress who we are just in general. So a lot of times, and we take that into our adulthood, okay? And we're even, and I give you this, with the shadow side, sometimes growing up as little kids, girl and boys, we are taught to even suppress our creativity. So I want y'all to always understand that when you are dealing with your shadow side is not all negative. It can be some positive things in you. That it's just like if you meet a person where they really love to read books and they want to write books, right? As a little kid, their parents or anybody in their life as a little kid, people could have made that person feel like, okay, you know, you need to stop reading books so much. You know, you need to start doing something else. This is not going to help you in the long run. You know, and so what happens is because that child was judged, that child started to suppress that side of him or her that really loves to read books and want to write books. And so what happens is they suppressed it to the point where now the love that they had to write books and read books, they no longer have that love for that anymore. Why? Because they were judged by it. And so they had to suppress it. And so as they got older, they went and got jobs that they didn't even love. They was miserable at. Why? Because they were taught from young, from birth, to suppress their creativity. You see what I'm saying? Me doing these videos, I was always taught or just even felt like nobody would listen to me, or I didn't have anything to really offer the world or give or help people, right? And so by me being like that since I was younger and feeling like that, I suppressed who I was. You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to understanding, when it comes to really understanding and getting the downloads, I suppressed that from when I was younger, right? Because I was always an affectionate kid that wanted to help people, okay? So I suppressed that part of me because I was told from the time I was little and young that that's a sign of weakness, you know? And you don't let nobody see you weak. That's a sign of vulnerability. No, don't be vulnerable like that. So I suppressed that side of me. And for years, I put on a mask of not being who I really, really was, that little girl in me. So now to be where I am now I have come into a place where I'm authentically just allowing my shadow side to come out. And that means my creativity. That means doing these YouTubes. That means helping other people and encouraging other people. That means doing my clothing brand, you know, and whatever else that God got. Even if it means God want me to write a book one day. That means now I'm embracing my shadow side. And what I'm doing, I'm giving love to that little girl that was suppressed in me for so long. And now I'm able to give her the love she needs and let her see that it's okay to be free. It's okay to do your creativity, and it's okay to follow whatever it is that you want to do in life and fulfill it. Okay? So that's the shadow work. So that's what the shadow side is of us, okay? So in order to do the shadow work, this is what you have to understand about this, okay? Is that for one, you have to first really, 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 really figure out what is your shadow side. What are the things that you most despise? What are your biggest triggers? And when you are triggered, how does it cause you to react or respond to it? Okay, so that's the one thing you have to first identify. What is your shadow side? What are your triggers? Okay, and in your most intense relationships, what were the things that triggered you the most? And that's where you'll begin to understand and know, wow, okay. So if you was the type of person where you was in a relationship and your anger will go from 0 to 100 in seconds, that's one of your shadow sides. You got anger problems, you got anger issues, okay? If you were a passive aggressive person where you vocally didn't express how you feel at all, right? And you got in relationships or friendships and you couldn't express yourself, right? You see what I'm saying? Boom, that's your shadow side. So what I'm saying is only you know your shadow side, but that's the first thing. You have to first identify what triggers, what is your shadow side, and why am I triggered by this, okay? The second thing you have to do is understand that don't be so hard on yourself. Because a lot of times when we see our shadow sides, we get hard on ourselves. We really, really do. I do it still sometimes. And I have to always keep going back in and trying to give myself that love. Because sometimes if I see something I did and I knew I was like wrong about it, or I allowed my shadow side to come up, what I do is I kick myself so hard sometimes, and I have to remind myself that Danielle, it's okay. You know, we all make mistakes, or even if you did it and you knew you did it, it's okay. What you do now is you take that and you learn from it and you do better to become the best version of yourself. See, that's all we doing. When I'm talking about learning your shadow side and doing the shadow work, this is all because we are supposed to become the best versions of ourselves. That's why you want to do this shadow work. That's why you want to learn what your shadow side is, because you want to become the best version of yourself, the best version of yourself in this lifetime. So that's the second thing. Don't be so hard on yourself when you see your shadow side. You know what I'm saying? What you got to understand, our shadow side is little boys and little girls that's been wounded, okay, that's been traumatized, that's been taught to suppress who we really are in our creativity. And we've been taught as little boys and little girls to suppress even our shadow side. When we feel things or we hurt or we angry, we've been taught to suppress all of those things. And what you got to learn in number 2 is you got to be willing to sometimes just not suppress your shadow side. Just allow your shadow side to be there, because without it being there, you won't know how to really heal effectively. You won't know what the root of why that triggered you. And you won't understand the root of how do you begin to heal from that trigger and what just caused you to act the way you acted. So that's the second thing. You got to bring love. You got to bring love to that little boy and that little girl in you, because that's all it is. It's just little boys and little girls still traumatized from childhood all the way up to adulthood. And it's just little boys and little girls suppressed who they really are. That's all it is. So you got to learn how to bring love to yourself. You got to learn how not to be so hard on yourself. Be gentle. It's okay. We all have moments where our shadow side comes out, but that's a beautiful thing when your shadow side come out, because what it's going to do is let you see that, wow, I see my shadow side, but I know I still got a lot of work to do to really heal. And now that I know this is my shadow side, this gives me the opportunity to really, really reflect and figure out what do I need to do to really go on my spiritual journey, really learn about self-love, and really give myself that self-care, so that I can begin to heal that little boy or that little girl inside of me, so that she can be free to be herself now and she don't have to suppress anything. That's the purpose of this. And so that's number 2. Number 3 is that you want to figure out what it all started from. You know, like, where did you first start suppressing who you really are? You know, where did you first learn how to start suppressing your fears? Where did you first start learning how to suppress your creativity? Where did you first learn how to start suppressing your feelings and your emotions? Where did you first learn how to start suppressing? Who told you to suppress that? Who made you feel like you wouldn't be accepted if you express those things? Who made you suppress your desires, your ideas? Where is the root, and where did it all start from, where you suppressed all of those things? Where's the root of it? So that means that if it was from your childhood and you were taught to suppress your creativity, you were taught to suppress your fears, you were taught to suppress your ideas, you were taught to suppress your desires, then you got to go back to that place and revisit it. And it's going to be some painful. I'm just not going to sit on this video and tell y'all it's going to be painful sometimes. Sometimes all you're going to be able to do is just cry. Sometimes all you're going to be able to do is just lay in the bed and allow God to hold you and just let God comfort you as you go through that painful times and traumas that you got to revisit. Sometimes all you can do is just go through that pain and feel it. And let God heal you as you go through it. There is no other way around it. But to get to a place of self-love, I really want everybody to get to a place of self-love, to genuinely heal. I'm not talking about surface level healing. Really heal a lot of internal wounds and traumas that you haven't even told people about, that people can't even fathom what you've been through. But to get to a place where you can heal those spaces and those things like that with you internally, that's why it's vital. That's why it's vital that you know what your shadow side is. And that's why it's vital that you do the shadow work. To become the best version for yourself, to become the best version for God, to become the best version for your children, to become the best version for people around you. That's why you want to do the shadow work. And I just encourage you guys. I know that it may get scary. And I know that some people can fear doing the shadow work and really going deep like that. Because it means that you got to really go deep within your own self. That means that you got to allow yourself to be so open to God and so vulnerable and so sensitive to where you have to let down every single one of your guards to feel what you finna feel. And I know that because trust me when I tell y'all I go through it every day more than people know. It's days where I will sit for like a 30 minutes to an hour just in tears crying. And it's been times where it's days where I sit for 2 or 3 hours. I'm not lying to y'all, just laying on the couch in tears crying. Because that's all part of me doing the shadow work so that I can heal. Really, really get to the root of healing internally. And trust me when I tell y'all, I'm not just healing for me. I'm healing for God. I'm healing because I want my children to heal. I'm healing because my family. I'm healing for the people around me. I'm healing to help other people. So it's going to require a lot of tears sometimes. But it's going to be worth it in the end. It's going to be worth it. When you can look at yourself in the mirror and see the great version that's coming out of you every day more and more, you're going to know it. You're going to be like, all of these, everything I'm going through now, it's all worth it. Because you're going to start seeing the best version of yourself. You really is. And it's going to be times where your shadow side pop out again. And then you got to do some more shadow work. But that's okay. Because it's all of this is going to bring you to the best version of you. And that's where your goal is. So I hope that this was able to give y'all more of a depth of what your shadow side is and what you have to do for the shadow work. And I just really, really hope that everybody gets to that place where they really trying to get to spiritually on y'all spiritual journey. And I just feel like as long as you continue to persevere and do the work and really, really allow yourself to step into that work internally and really get to the root of a lot of the stuff, I feel like the little girl and the little boy in you will be so happy. And what'll happen is you'll be able, even in times where that little boy, that little girl in you starts to, get fearful, or the shadow side comes up in the little boy or the little girl in you. You'll be able to talk to that little girl and that little boy in you. You'll be able to talk to the little girl in you and say, you know what? It's okay. It's okay that you fear. It's okay that you want to express yourself. It's okay if you want to, make a YouTube video. It's okay if you want to read your book. It's okay if you want to write a book. It's okay if you want to do that art project. It's okay if you want to paint. It's okay. It's okay for you to be you. And what you're doing, you giving love to that little girl that's in you, because that's all it is. It's like the little girl that's in you want to know that I'm fully accepted. My shadow side and my light side is fully accepted by me. And you give love to that little boy and little girl in you. And you allow them to see that no matter what it is, whether your shadow side come out or whether it's your light side, I love you no matter what. And I'm going to always be right here to protect you. I'm going to always be right here when the world can't accept you, when your friends don't accept you, when romantically your partner don't accept you. I'm going to always accept you no matter what. I'm going to always be in your corner. I'm going to always be your biggest cheerleader no matter what. That's the love you want to give to the little girl and the little boy in you. That's how you do your shadow work. I love you guys. You are such beautiful souls. And you guys continue to flourish. You guys continue to go on your spiritual journey and really do the work to really, really go on a deep, deep, deep spiritual journey of self-love. So I encourage y'all. I love y'all. Y'all be blessed. Beautiful, 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 beautiful souls out there.